Well, good evening and welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Some of you were here last week, some of you weren't, so maybe we could just introduce ourselves real quick.
I'm Carol Marshall. I'm on the Children, Youth and Family Board.
I'm Annalise Smith. I'm just a member of the church.
Great. Nice to meet you.
I'm Luce Reyes, so a member of the church. I'm Zoe Estrada, and I am the junior high youth director at the church. And this is my brother.
I'm Benjamin Wood. I come to the Bible study on Sunday mornings, and I come to worship pretty much too. So that's why I'm here. I kind of explained a little bit earlier. This book is new out by the UC Press, Pilgrim Press, and it is Black History Month. And yesterday is the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. There's a lot, every day is some important day in Black history. Last week, this is my proposed agenda. Right now, we just have 2 sessions set aside. So since last week we talked about history and just about the book, I thought people would really probably be most interested in the theology that's presented. So I thought we would try to cover education and theology before we share the recommended Bible verse and then have a discussion. Also because I think probably most people haven't gotten the book yet. Jacob said he was going to order some, so I think they might be on the desk in there because I saw a package that looked about big size. But it's locked, so I guess we can't get them tonight. But hopefully, we'll put some in the library, or folks want to grab it, maybe we can meet again. I'm not sure. So does that sound okay for tonight?
So could we if the books were in the library, could we just come in and borrow them?
What Jacob told me about the library is that it's basically honor system.
Okay.
So I guess that system can work. But I would really like to catalog these. Because, sometimes the books are available in the public library, especially really specialized topics. And if it's here, it can be a resource for us, but if things are cataloged, it could be much more of a resource. Especially if we can just look it up online. So I actually already started. I did those 2 shelves so far.
Are you using a library management system?
Yes, it's an app called Libib. That's the one I use for my personal library.
Oh, wow.
And it's free. So they also have a paid version, like if you want to check stuff out. But I found it very useful for cataloging my personal collection. So I think it's just scan the barcode and it pops right up for the most part.
And it populates all because I was a librarian.
Well, then we should talk.
I'm gonna see something over there. I don't have my keys, but Gio's here, so.
Okay. So just to kind of catch up folks who weren't here last week, the authors of this book have put together a study guide, and they have proposed 8 modules. Like I said, so far we're just doing 2, but they also put together a purpose. It's very detailed. So I just excerpted that to kind of remind us that the purpose is to develop a deeper knowledge and understanding of the legacy of the Afro-Christian Convention as the 5th founding stream of the United Church of Christ, and how it widens and deepens our commitment and vision as a denomination and church. So just a little excerpt of the purpose that they had in their study guide. It also, in their purpose, talks about the theme of Ubuntu that is running through the whole book. Does anybody remember what Ubuntu was, or things that come to mind?
Put on the spot.
Something to the notion about togetherness, or just like a deeper sense of community.
Yeah, definitely. It's about I think one of the translations is I am because you are, or you are because I am, this sense of interconnectedness. And yeah, like you said, kind of a profound sense of community, and it infuses the practice with things like respect, dignity. We're just sitting around the table, so you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, I'm Diana, mother of this person, that person, mother-in-law of that.
I mentioned too that one of the big themes is that of flowing. Every chapter begins with flowing somewhere. So this also because they talk about the currents that united in 1957 to form the United Church of Christ being streams that are flowing into the church. So it really fits into that metaphor. Other things that are kind of prevalent are the fact that Black voices and perspectives are what are centered in this book. Very strong themes of social justice, which we're going to talk a little about, education and theology. And so that's why I thought we could focus on education and theology tonight. We did an overview of the history, kind of along a timeline and kind of helping folks understand what are these main streams, the four streams of the United Church of Christ that come together in 1957 that have been documented in kind of the mainstream history of the denomination. And so, and then where does this fifth stream, this acknowledges the fifth stream. Yay, we have books. Four. And then the authors of the study guide also have a Bible verse
If you want to book.
I do.
that they recommend. So like we did last time, we shared it at the end. The idea being that we could consider how that Bible verse also relates to the topic and then kind of have a discussion around that. So that's what we did last time.
I listened to it and I like the pattern that you put on the slides.
Oh, thank you. That came from the email that was sent out from the national denomination about a talk on environmental justice that had happened just the day before.
Wow.
It was a great talk. It was about an hour. And they used that same kind of theme. It kind of looks like kente cloth. And so I was like, this is great for my PowerPoint.
So just going back.
Sure.
So it's in 1957 where the United Church welcomes and recognizes the Black congregation.
No, that was in 2022. Well, there was acknowledgement that this fifth stream had been here all along.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a long story. But I can show that PowerPoint too. If it's helpful.
I'll read the first chapter.
Yeah. The intro is, or actually, I think
I can't see it, so.
okay, sorry.
Okay, well.
Do you have somebody online or?
No, not right now. So if anybody jumps in, hopefully it'll give me a message.
Where did you send that to me? Because I kind of lost it. I missed the very last.
In your text. I sent you a text with the YouTube link. Okay. So to come back to today we have two themes, education and theology. So I have some notes here, hopefully you can look at that. And we're not gonna get too lost. So there's a whole chapter in this book, it's chapter 4, if I remember correctly, about this institution called the Franklinton Center at Bricks, which is in North Carolina. And is kind of emblematic of, the tradition in itself. It's it came about because the Afro-Christian Convention, this fifth stream, had has created a Christian college to train ministers, also in North Carolina, in Franklinton, North Carolina. And the Congregational Church had set up a more of like a vocational type school, both for African Americans, also in North Carolina, about an hour east. And they called it Bricks after the one of the main donors. Both of those institutions shut down like in 1931 and 33, Great Depression, couldn't afford them anymore. And then they merged together at this place called Bricks later. So it's kind of it gives us an idea, or it's another example of this united and uniting kind of tendency that we see very present in the UCC. And also, that we have a coming together of the Congregationalists tradition and the Christian church tradition. Which we'll talk about in a second too. So I just wanted to show you their website. I'm gonna have to do a new share. Oh, Miguel's here. Hi, Miguel. Hey, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm on my way to work and I'm on my bicycle.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. Well, my name is Miguel. To Sunday Bible study and also this event. Sometimes I forget to go to Bible study or I sleep in. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I guess someone who for a long time hasn't considered just so Christian would kind of like I guess doesn't feel very like threatening to my sensibility when I go. So that's a good sign.
It's a little bit hard to hear you, Miguel, so, but thank you for introducing yourself.
Is this your brother?
No, it's just another brother, brother from another mother.
Not Marina's,
No, no,
That's Paul.
I'm sorry, Paul?
His name is Paul, yeah, this is Miguel. He's one of our comrades from the environmental justice movement and the indigenous, sovereignty movement and stuff like that, so. He's a brother. So this is the website I just want to show you. And the mission, it says the mission of Franklinton Center at BRICS is to provide a nurturing home to local, national, and global programs and organizations seeking liberation. And there's a brief history here. The Franklinton Center at BRICS is located on the site of what was formerly a plantation. The center traces its beginnings to the founding of the Franklinton Christian College in 1871 and the Congregationalist BRICS School in 1895. Those schools closed, and in 1946, the Franklinton Center formed to provide opportunities for Christian education, fellowship, and recreation. It moved from Franklinton, North Carolina to BRICS in 1954 and was named the Franklinton Center at BRICS in 1994 as the Ministry of the United Church of Christ, managed and staffed by the UCC's Justice and Witness Ministries. Franklinton Center at BRICS became a standalone 501c3 tax exempt organization in 2015. So this is a tradition that is continuing. So they've got some cool pictures too of some of their events that they rent it out a lot for conferences and retreats and stuff like that. They have a lot of land. He's got some of their programs: Center for African American Historic Preservation, Center for Rural Community Development, Education and Engagement, which really goes back to some of the roots as being a place for vocational training, especially about farming and agriculture. Social Justice Conference and Retreat Centers, a lot of leadership training, Center for Land-Based Innovation. So those are some of the current programs that they have. At Franklinton Center, has anybody been there? Oh, I was just curious because I know they do stuff for the UCC and thought maybe some folks might have gone. Maybe they have gone.
For sure.
Or some of the other folks who are involved. Yeah, let's go, let's send them. Or let's do a field trip. What field trip? Okay. So let me go back to my. Oh, we don't even have a video on.
I
But
was
it's okay.
thinking about it.
We don't need it because we're sharing screen, I think, most of the time.
You must not be able to.
Probably because you're sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. Let's go back to. Oh, there we are. Hi. Hi,
Oh.
friends. Okay, we're.
Should have brought my person because I just started reading a book and I already forgot the name, but it was for Jesse and somebody. And
Stanley?
it's Oprah's book club and it's about, I only read the first chapter while I was at the urgent care. Today.
What
Yeah.
was it?
It's talking about, a girl who she was with her mother and they were on a plantation. And she was actually the master of the plantation, her illegitimate daughter. And then when she got of age, he sent the mother away because he wanted to with the daughter. But there's supposed to be some kind of magic in it, that's what.
Oh, it's,
I don't have some magic.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so the folks at Bricks, especially after the merger, have been very deeply involved in social justice struggles. Voter registration, there was a time when people who were eligible for loans, especially government-backed loans for farms, were, even though they were qualified, they were not getting approved. And so they developed a program to review the applications and kind of fight to make sure that those people were able to get loans. They also hosted one of the early conventions of the Southern Tenant Farmers Union, and the sharecroppers. And a lot of racial justice training. And the racial justice training that they did there ended up leading to the abolition of the death penalty in North Carolina in 1976.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. And there was another struggle there. A lot of racial justice advocates there in North Carolina were involved in the struggle for school desegregation. And some of them, 10 of them, were criminalized and were imprisoned. And so leaders, including Ben Chavez, who was a reverend of the UCC, and so they were locked up for like 9 years. They finally got out in 1980.
Oh.
And so when Ben Chavez was in there, he wrote a memoir, and it's published also by the Pilgrim Press. And I mentioned last time that one of the speakers at the environmental justice talk.
It just was trying to get that.
Okay. I'm looking for my notes, but I can't find. There we go. Dr. Robert Bowler, he coined the term environmental racism. And Ben Chavez wrote the preface for it. So that's how folks were also getting involved in the struggle to free political prisoners. We're also centered in at Bricks.
I see though, just that one state. Just that one state is really, that is.
Oh, yeah, no, it's sad. I mean, it's not even banned here in California. And then there's another environmental justice fighter. Her name is Dolly Burwell, and she was leading struggles against, they wanted to dump toxic waste in this African American community in Afton, North Carolina. They ended up losing that struggle and they dumped the toxic waste there, but it really highlighted the issue and brought environmental racism and environmental justice kind of into the the common vernacular. So this is a lot of struggles that folks at Bricks and in North Carolina have been involved in for a long time. So I wanted to point out this symbol. You can see that this is a symbol that was adopted by the leadership of the Franklin Center at Bricks in when was it? 2019. And I just want to read a little quote here. It says, in 2019, the Board of Trustees and staff of Franklin Center at Bricks adopted the Sankofa symbol to represent the logo for the organization. Sankofa is an African word from the Akan ethnic group in Ghana. The literal translation of the word and the symbol is, quote, "It is not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind." The symbol is based on a mythical African bird that has its feet steadfastly planted forward with its head turned backward while holding a golden egg in its mouth. Like the Akan people, Franklin Center at Bricks believes in the wisdom of learning from the past to ensure a strong future. So I thought that was emblematic. So that would also kind of guide us into the discussion of theology, because it's for theological reasons that they've chosen this symbol. But before I mentioned that, I wanted to, before we switch into theology, I wanted to mention that kind of in the blurb for this book group, I mentioned that this particular history for this stream has there's been discrimination and repression. Hi, are you looking for the book group?
I'm trying to look for a book, and it's not.
No, I don't know where it is.
Upstairs, maybe, upstairs.
Sorry.
Thank you.
No
No
problem.
problem.
Sorry. Progress, not perfection.
Oh, progress, not. No, it's progress, not perfection, so it's not upstairs. Is NA. But there's some other rooms upstairs, so.
There's a lot, yeah.
It's a busy church.
That's why we like.
So education is one of the main places where we see that there has been this marginalization or even discrimination, even within the denomination. Because it was more so the UCC members or churches that were, Congregationalist, as opposed to the ones that were Afro-Christian convention churches that had access to higher education. And they go into a little bit more detail about how, because of that, they had access to higher positions of leadership and even things like pensions and things that folks, even though they were in leadership positions in the Afro-Christian churches, because they didn't have that formal education, they basically didn't have access to resources or even, retirement funds. So this is the book that was written. This is the Hidden Histories of the United Church of Christ. I mentioned it last week that there's a chapter about the Afro-Christian Convention in this book. This one came out in '84, but it's only 15 pages. But the author here has a pretty succinct way to characterize this history also of discrimination, and which says Black Congregationalists were beneficiaries of the education, acculturation, and religious orientation of the American Missionary Association, AMA, which the UCC basically took over. The Congregations took leadership of. Whereas Afro-Christians were the victims of neglect by their white Christian counterparts. So it
Wait,
just,
sorry, can you read it again?
sure. Black Congregationalists were beneficiaries of the education, acculturation, and religious orientation of the American Missionary Association. So basically, Congregationalist ministry. Whereas Afro-Christians were victims of neglect by their white Christian counterparts. So that's a sad part of the history, but I think one thing that speaks well of the denomination is that they're now doing what they can to bring out this previously hidden history through publishing this book and resolutions and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about theology. And again, my caveat, I'm not an expert on the history of the denomination or on theology, or much less Black theology. I just like to study Black history and read in general. I'm not Black or African American. So caveat there, but I would just want to mention, I do. We have some diversity in our family. There's 3 chapters that really focus specifically on theology. Chapter 5 is flowing from an African and Christian theology. Christ is the only head of the church. Chapter 7 is flowing into the UCC with spirit, praise, joy, and freedom. Unashamedly Black, unapologetically Christian. Chapter 8 is flowing as an everlasting stream for spiritual transformation, a global model of Ubuntu for justice and liberation. So I just pulled a few things out of each one of those chapters, and but it's also present throughout the book. So I have a quote that I really like that I want to share before we go into discussion. Okay. And let me check my notes. And yeah, I just want to mention that the word theology is used in many different ways. Sometimes people talk about how denominations have their own theology, individuals have their own theologies, and even Black theology is not monolithic, kind of like we talked about last time about how, the Baptists are gonna have a different theology than, the UCC, other denominations. Understanding. So, this, from this is from chapter 5. It talks about how, the Afro-Christian convention comes out of the Christian church, and last time we talked about how the Christian church, it comes out of the Second Great Awakening, right around the time of the American Revolution. These are folks that had moved into the frontier from the coastal areas, and they wanted to get away from denominationalism, from identifying as a Baptist or a Methodist or an Anglican.
That didn't.
Well, in their case, it kind of worked, and this is also kind of one of these united and uniting traditions, because it brought folks together from different traditions. They were very democratic. They didn't necessarily believe that you had to be ordained to be a leader or a teacher. There were strains within this Christian church that were abolitionist, even though the church itself did not take an abolitionist position. So I just want to share this quote from James O'Kelly, who was a Revolutionary War veteran and one of the early leaders of this Christian movement. It says, in 1789, O'Kelly published a blistering attack on American slavery that he began with a quote from Ecclesiastes. I considered all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of such as were oppressed, and they had no comfort. This is from Ecclesiastes 4:1. He was told to tone down his rhetoric against the enslavement system. Yet O'Kelly told the stories of enslaved families torn apart for the payment of debts. He cried out, "O ye bloody overseers, ye devils incarnate, drop your whip and stand trembling yourselves before God." O'Kelly even confessed his past prejudice in being more concerned about the condition of white people than that of Black people. So that is interesting.
So the people that moved to the frontier were both Black and white, and so the churches were mixed.
Some of them were, but most of them weren't, especially in the South. A lot of Black people joined this Christian church movement, but they made their own churches, and that's what the Afro-Christian Convention is or was before it joined up with the congregations. Yeah. So the Christian church, they basically had 5 principles. Jesus Christ is the only head of the church. Christian is a sufficient name for the church, so not this Methodist Baptist stuff. The Holy Bible is a sufficient rule of faith, rule for faith and practice. Christian character is a significant test for membership and fellowship, and the right of private judgment and the liberty of conscience are rights and privileges that should be accorded to and exercised by all. And what the book says is that the congregations that are rooted in the Afro-Christian tradition, they still hold to these principles. So I went a little bit backwards. Okay, the other chapter, chapter 7, I believe it was, it's the subtitle of the chapter is Unashamedly Black and Unapologetically Christian. This is a phrase that is associated with Pastor Jeremiah Wright, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, which we talked about last time as being the pastor of Trinity UCC in Chicago. You're nodding your head. He was Obama's pastor, and so I think maybe not a lot of people know, but Obama, this was his. I think he had kind of renounced Jeremiah Wright, but for many years, Obama was a member of the Trinity UCC in
Because
Chicago.
Jeremiah Wright says something, right?
Oh, yeah.
Jeremiah Wright says something, and that becomes a problem when he's trying to get elected.
Yeah, well, he had said it many years before, but it was recorded, and so the anti-Obama people, brought it out from years of recorded sermons and tried to use it to drag Obama's name through the mud. Something like America, goddamn America, or something like that. He's basically criticizing US policy. But, so this phrase is associated with Jeremiah Wright. And if we think about it, in 1957, at the time that the UCC, those 5 streams that are now acknowledged were coming together, this is right when the civil rights movement is taking off, right after Brown v. Board of Education, right when the first, big mobilizations are happening. So, this chapter talks a lot about how, the theology is influenced by the civil rights movement, by the Black Power movement, about how it mentions how in 1969, it was African-American clergy within the UCC that stopped the proceedings of the General Synod to allow James Foreman, who was the chair of CORE, to deliver the Black Manifesto, really, an activist stopping the church from what they're doing and say, hey, you guys need to pay attention to what's going on in Black America and you need to be involved, right? And then how a lot of the theologians and pastors and activists really formed a Black theology movement. They put together a project to bring together theologians from across the diaspora not across the diaspora, but more so South America, North America, and the Caribbean. And also at this time, gospel music, which especially the Black congregational churches, much more so than the Afro-Christian churches, kind of look down on, it starts being accepted more in worship and other worship styles that are rooted in African worship traditions start being more accepted. And there's a picture of Reverend Wright in 1973, and he's got a big, pretty big, it's on page 100, pretty big afro. There's also this issue of the Afro-Christian theology not being focused on what they call compensatory religion. And so I just wanted to read a quick quote from there, that's the same page 100. It says, because of their history, members in the Afro-Christian Convention were not solely fixated on or led by quote unquote compensatory religion, as Reverend Dr. Benjamin E. Mays referred to it in The Negro's God. What's compensatory religion? Compensatory religion is a theological posture that calls for oppressed people to suffer the exigencies of earthly denial and disenfranchisement in exchange for heavenly rewards in the sweet by and by. So kind of this, you'll get your just reward in heaven. Kind of forget about this world. This is kind of talking about how, no, we're focused, we're not, yes, we're focused on our soul and redemption in heaven, but we're also going to focus on justice in this world, right? So that was interesting. And there's another part in this chapter where they mention about how Black theology has given African Americans, probably beyond the UCC, but definitely within the UCC, a way of viewing whites as capable of redemption and of restoration through, theological practice. I thought that was interesting. I didn't put it, I made a bullet point about it, but I did think that was interesting. I wanted to share. Let me check my notes real quick.
Dr. Lewis Gates, he does the Finding Your Roots. He also does the series on Black gospel music.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, and they had a whole thing about it because it became really popular, and then they started just cutting records and everything became like super popular.
Oh yeah, and it's actually a moneymaker too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why. Everybody.
So then chapter 8 was the one about and this one really so let me see. Chapter 7, yeah. Chapter 7 it goes a lot more into the African roots of Black theology into a lot of detail. And so there's and I think that's what I wanted to mention about Black theology not being monolithic. Some elements of Black theology are not exclusive to, either Black Congregationalism or the Afro-Christian Convention. But it talks a little bit about it in the book. So this his religious studies scholar Sierra Lincoln talks about the cosmos itself being sacred in the African conception, and that it's here the message of the invisible church, however it was articulated, is God wants you free. And this Reverend Dr. Gay Road Wilmore, who is a Black liberation theologian, which James Cone is kind of the preeminent theologian of liberation coming from the Black tradition. But he talks about this Yoruba concept of orita, which means the ways we come together or where our paths meet to express how this Black sacred cosmos flows. So in some ways similar to Ubuntu, but it's this in metaphor of a crossroads.
The title of that book is.
Yeah, and it doesn't talk a lot about Black liberation theology in this book, but James Cone has very interesting take on liberation about theology, which is liberation theology. That says basically, one of the things that he says is we have to be able to envision the crucified Christ in the image of the African American on the lynching tree. So yeah, that's pretty powerful. And Reverend Albert Cleage says something similar. Jesus was Black, emphatically. And they also include this proverb, however far the stream flows, it never forgets its source. So talking about how we remember, or African Americans remember, that their first experience with the divine was in Africa. We talked about a little bit last time. And so this concept informs practice, right? And to being involved in the struggles in Africa, including taking a position against apartheid. What were at first missions to Africa are now more of fellowships with African congregations. So the next slide talks a little bit about that. This comes from the chapter 4, I think.
When you're talking about the missions thing, like, who are you saying has now changed to like?
Yeah.
Because that's something that Laurel and I talk about a lot, because like for the summer, when the kids go on their trip, we call it a work trip and not a mission trip, because we talk about how like we hate that term of mission trip of being, it's like a white savior type of a thing.
I hate it. What's the Mormon musical?
Oh, the Book of
The
Mormon.
Book of Mormon.
I hated it. It's like, it makes fun of all religions too, and they're not just Mormons, but I thought it was terrible.
And I didn't do it either.
Oh, no.
But yeah, so like you saying that makes a lot of sense, because it's true. It's like, who are we to like,
I think it's just rude.
We're supposed to go convert everybody that.
Right.
The Bible says that, and it wasn't just a white Bible though.
Yeah, so that's that issue. How do you reconcile that? This great commission of having, it says very clearly, go and evangelize, right? With also being respectful, not being racist. So I think that's something that this church and this denomination is a little bit more willing to wrestle with than other denominations. But this quote comes from the book, this chapter 3, flowing from Hush Harbors as an Independent Church, about it's basically about the archive. Where are the documentary resources that scholars can use to write, because this is very short, right? And there's a lot more history that still needs to be written, history, theology, sociology, etc. But she tells it through her personal story. And this is Brenda Billups Square, who says, she's talking about how she met some UCC leaders. They're actually leading a church in San Diego on a trip to Southern Africa. And she says, in Mozambique and South Africa, experience the familiar power of the Holy Spirit in the singing, prayers, and my uncle preaching that I witnessed growing up in the Beulah Land Baptist Church in the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans. It was much like the joyful singing and worship of the indigenous Zionist churches of Southern Africa. The Spirit of God was in the African churches fighting apartheid in South Africa. I experienced the same freedom at worship with Africans in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. It was the same spirit that was also moving in the Black church in America. So I like this quote because I feel like her theology is just very embodied, right? It was, she, as something that she had experience of, through her life. And she talks more about it, her life story in that chapter. But that particular trip was very, I think, instrumental in her having a lived experience of Black theology. And she is the director of the archives of the Afro-Christian Convention, which are housed at the Amistad Center, which is in New Orleans. She is also a co-pastor of a UCC church in New Orleans.
So the Afro-Christian Convention was in the United States, but it spread around the world.
It started in the US, yes, and they did missions mostly to the Caribbean. Yeah, and so it spread to the Caribbean and I think to Guyana also. Yeah. But I think it wasn't until later on that they started doing some missions to Africa. If I remember correctly. So this is the Bible verse that was actually already referenced in James O'Kelly's denunciation of slavery, but it's from Ecclesiastes. So I've been talking a lot. Does somebody else want to read it?
I'll read it. Yeah, just a little bit of it. Again, I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead, who had already died, are happier than the living, who are still alive. But better than both is the one who has never been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. And that's from Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 1 through 3.
Thank you. So I was kind of hoping that verse could, yeah, it would help, maybe help inform our discussion a little bit. Let me see if there's, oh, he's just telling me he's gonna listen to the recording later. So let's stop sharing.